for news, results, and CEO interviews focusing the junior commodities sector. We provide market analysis and perspective that will help position you for solid returns.
Good morning. It's January 18th, and we finally made it. Look at that. World Economic Forum annual meeting, Davos 23. We thought we'd have a little bit of fun today. And listen, if there's something in the news right now, it is the entire meeting that's going on over there in Davos.
Andrew, you're muted, by the way. Yeah.
Part of that conversation. So we'll start off with, a leading source, CNBC. So let's kick it off. And the article which is an op-ed, it's an opinion piece saying Davos elites like to make bold predictions, but they don't always get them right. Now, before I get into a couple of these, let's put things into context. You don't just get to go to Davos. You have to pay. You become a member. It costs a lot, and you can present at these things. It's a conference. It's kind of like some of the conferences you have in mining, or the what we call show, electronic show in Vegas. You set up a booth, pretty much. It's just next level. And is it a and this is the argument you have from the WF PR crowd is it's not an organization bent on one world government and overthrow of this and that and everything else, and they can easily say that because that probably isn't the mission statement. It isn't something, effectively out there is that that's what they want to do. But make no mistake, it's taken years for people, some people out there, to even acknowledge that this was a thing. We spent years fighting with people that the World Economic Forum is just a conspiracy theory. It doesn't, it's this and that and everything else. But anyways, we want to put some context in what we're talking about and having some fun with it because they don't get everything right. And why should they? Not everyone's a key board member and not everyone is part of the prediction squad, but you can just pay to be there. I mean, if we had enough money, Austin, we could actually, they probably wouldn't be. But if you pay them, you can show up and you can go. Because it talks about what things they didn't catch. Sometimes where they've been wrong, whether or Soros warning about nuclear war with North Korea in 2018. They weren't able to foresee the FTX crash, which once again, they're not saying coup, but they're just saying Jeff Schumacher, founder of Digital Venture, he wasn't able to see it. So what they've done in this op-ed is they've picked specific people high up that have made predictions and then got them wrong, which is going to happen. So, Austin, why don't you jump in and share one here just to get things going?
Well, the kind of thing that I like to use here to kind of hint on and talk about is obviously the mainstream media working very hard to downplay any sort of theories that are out there. So you see this kind of coordinated attack, whether it's in British media or American media, or the example I use is from Canadian media and a CBC article that says, conspiracy theories thrive online as World Economic Forum opens. And it breaks down, these wide range of conspiracy theories surrounding Davos and surrounding the World Economic Forum itself. And it says, this annual event that experts say has drawn conspiracy theories for all sorts of things about, one world government and all these different theories and ideas. But, they kind of use a couple of examples saying, social media users claim the leaders want to force the population to eat bugs. Well, that when you put it like that, it sounds a little ridiculous. But if you read Klaus Schwab's The Great Reset, it's kind of exactly what he's saying. So you can't necessarily push that away as a completely made-up conspiracy theory when it's in the source material of the founder of this event, and it's talked about in their 2020 kind of theme for 2020 was the Great Reset, and how are we going to build back better out of COVID. I wonder where we've heard that phrase used before.
Well, and I want to make clear to people that build back slogan isn't Joe Biden's. That is a World Economic Forum. I think it's 2012. They came up with it. And it's funny how universal across the progressive nations, it's the Justin Trudeau's, the Macron, the Jacinda, whatever, that's their term they like to use. So it's interesting in today's world where all these slogans and the same belief systems are all attached together.
and they all seem to be coordinating very well together. And that gets us into the complexity of what this is. Because, yeah, after all, it is a conference to highlight ideas, and to some people might have crazy, wacky ones. Some people may not. But it's very clear as to the key members. So Klaus, Larry Fink, who's been an editor and a huge supporter, he's behind a lot of this, and he's had some interesting posts, I think yesterday as well, claiming that he feels a bit under attack from both sides about what this is about. Interesting videos. You can see him on CNBC. But this is a very complicated conversation. And I guess what his highlight was, it's become so political. Well, yeah, because it's entirely ideologically driven. It's an entire, and even if you read that book, which we have to be careful, it's kind of like saying the pandemic word. You could get banned for saying certain words. And that's not being, once again, conspiracy theorists. That happens, and it's come out with the Twitter files and everything, which, once again, most people don't even know about because they won't go look at it, because they're fearful that if they read something from Matt Taibbi, who is a left-wing journalist, or Greenwald, who's a left-wing journalist, but because they fight for freedom of speech and quote-unquote right-wing causes, they don't want to look at it. But censorship is very active out there. These groups work coordinated with each other. I've made the case before that the entire woke movement is structured behind the coordination of BlackRock, Vanguard, WF, and UN. So that started, and we've had some reports and articles showing it happened first with education. Obama giving a ton of money to specifically change the education system. And we've seen what happened now. We're dealing with those effects today, where people can't even discern reality. And it's this combination of effects. So one of the things I just want to jump through quickly is acknowledging, if there's any naysayers out there, that it exists. Doesn't mean, and this is the argument, once again, I'll reiterate, they'll say, is it an organization to become a world government, blah, blah, blah. No, that probably isn't the basis of it, but that's what's called a straw man argument. If you want to know what they believe in, you can go right to their site. You can go read the book. And also bear in mind, that book, they made the prediction that pandemic was going to happen well before. And not only that, they also held games or simulations just about 8 weeks before the actual event occurred. So interesting timing. For major events, they've been more right than they've been wrong. And it just seems weird when you're able to get, and let's take a list of the who's who just for this year. To look at who's there. We'll scroll through. These are, president of the central bank, of European Central Bank, presidents of European Parliament, Greece, you name it, Serbia. There's Krista Freeland, John Kerry, of course, he's been up there. And of course, I think there's a lot of video of Al Gore losing his mind and freaking out. And I want to make one comment about that, which I've made before too, is that make no mistake, there isn't that there's divestiture and not investment in oil and gas. There absolutely is. It isn't that they're not still using coal. What they want to do is remove it from the West. So you'll see a very current theme. We just reported the other day that China just signed a 30-year deal with ISIS and Afghanistan for their oil and gas. It doesn't mean because they're talking about divesting that it's actually happening. It's just that they don't want the West to do it. They want it to be done by someone else. So all of you people that are really on side with stopping using coal, stop using oil and gas, it's not happening. This is a movement that is entirely based on politics and ideology.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if you want to go further on top of that as well, is like if you think the infrastructure in the West isn't built to go away from coal and oil and gas and everything like that, the infrastructure in like developing nations is even further away from being able to do that. So even if you're just making the argument from that perspective, okay, well, sure, it might be easier for the West to make these changes than it would be, in a South Africa or in a India or you can list any varying number of countries. So it's a very interesting kind of move that is clearly engineered by people who have a similar set of beliefs and similar set of ideologies, certainly. But for the normal kind of person, if you listen to a lot of what the conversation is around this group, it sounds like it's run by a villain from a James Bond movie or one of the Tom Cruise ones, the Mission Impossible movies. That's what it sounds like. That's what it reads like. But the incredible effort that's being done by kind of mainstream media to normalize this is very, very interesting to watch.
Yes. And you'll see, I mean, we scroll through these names. If you want to see the most far left extremist authoritarian type places that are into a lot of these themes of open borders, mass migration, and whether what your beliefs on are that is that it's just, you'll see this here. And what it is, it's a passover of power. It's a shift. And that's what the World Economic Forum talks about openly, is that in its essence, the West is going to pay for the sins of its past. It's going to be a change of power to the other. Now, once again, you don't have to take my word for it. I would hope that people would go to their website, look at some of the stuffs, look at some of the predictions they've made. And if people are curious, and I get this every once in a while, is, well, Andrew, that's kind of interesting. You were able to call out some of these things that have pretty good predictive ability. I'm like, well, it's got very little to do with prediction. It's just looking at these people and what they're literally saying. And even when I show people, they still have total disbelief. But that's part of what's happening today. And that, and if you tend to buy into one of the narratives that they put out, that gets championed as the cause of the day, chances are you believe in all of them.
Yeah, it's you start to get built into this sort of system of beliefs of like, oh, well, if you think this, then you also have to think this. And that's a problem with modern politics across the board today anyways, is that it's become far too idealized in the sense of, you can't think outside of what's supposed to be your party's line of thinking. Like, if you believe in X, then you also have to believe in Y, and you also have to believe in Z. And it's, I mean, that's a terrible way for us to go about sorting out our politics anyways. But groups and organizations like this don't make it easier for us to break down those barriers. They make it more idealized and more kind of narrow and focused in your system of beliefs and your system of what's going to work best.
Yeah, and not to get too much into this, because I mean, I love the conversation, but it's the idea that there's no objective truth, that there is no objective reality. There is no objective science. There's nothing that's, like essentially biology has no basis. And if anyone feels like that they're, a truck, well, they're a truck, I guess. Anyone could be anything. Truth could be whatever you personally mean, which is nonsense. But that's the current belief today, that there isn't anything that's real. It's all subjective. And that is an ideological term called subversion, which we haven't really talked too much about, but there's videos on it. But there's, just as a side note, if you want to get, it's a show called Trigonometry. So a lot of you right away aren't going to want to look at it, but it's a satirist, and he's a Russian-British satirist called Konstantin Kisin. He's put out a great 8-minute YouTube that people should watch. And oddly enough, it's something we talked about just a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. And this was in regards to climate change. And it wasn't denying that, yes, there is the climate's changing. It was, in his case, and I'll give you some of it, is his argument was here at, I think it's the Oxford Debate Society. He said, I'm on board with you. Let's let, climate change. What can we do here in England? And he says, well, nothing. If England were to sink into the sea, we cause 2% of carbon emissions. It's irrelevant. That's all of England that's all of it. So they have absolutely no impact on the world. Canada, significantly, massively less. So why is it that this machine is entirely focused and turned on us? Why can't you talk about, well, what's the impact of China? What's the impact of India? What's the impact of South America and Africa on this, on the environment? That is not open to discussion. So that kind of, once again, reminds you that is this really about climate change, or is this about an ideological movement to reshape the way people think and view the world?
Yeah, which is kind of the direction that I would say is what it's been purposed towards. And you mentioned, that this is kind of a collection of not exactly the best leaders. And I wish we could show the video, but obviously it'll get taken off YouTube if we do, so we can't. But I believe it was last year's World Economic Forum that Klaus Schwab opened by thanking Xi Jinping and the leadership of China for their kind of leadership and direction during the COVID pandemic.
Yes.
I mean, really, is that the people we want to be praising for their openness and fairness and and free democracy? Let's just say. I don't know if they'd be at the top of the list of people that I.
Well, I mean, Justin does the same. Justin openly applauds and talks about what a great leader this communist authoritarian leader is, which is absolutely insane. It's the equivalent of someone saying, it's like Ye saying, "Hey, I really admire that German fella that was leader of the Nazis. Like, that's great." That's the response you should have, is someone applauding a communist leader, an authoritarian. But it's actively done, and people just kind of accept it. But let's kind of leave that aside, because it is interesting, because even Larry Fink, who's a capitalist apparently, and he runs BlackRock, they are a main investor in Chinese oil. So now, why does this matter? He even says in his speech that, oh, well, it's our clients are coming to us wanting that. No, it's not. They are on the board of almost every Fortune 500 company. And you can go back and read articles from 2012 onward about how they come onto boards. They push this diversity, inclusion, woke ideology. If you disagree with it, they remove you from the board. And they say, we're not placing money with you. It's that simple. Now people go, oh, well, it's not his money. Yeah, it is. If you put money into their funds, it's not his, but they control it. It's their proxy vote. They have the power associated with it. So make no mistake, we've empowered people to make an ideological change and push. And once again, why? There's lots of people who do videos on the why, but we just want to point out the truth. And once again, why does it matter to us? Because a lot of money is going to be spent on a lot of these initiatives, and we want people to be comfortable with some of it. The social and the governance stuff, you should fight back against. I mean, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but it's not good. But there are good things in it as well. And that's why there's misinformation on not only every topic and the World Economic Forum itself, which makes the task daunting, to say the least. You're going to get, if you search it, mostly PR of supporters of them. But let's pull that out with the Hall of Shame here, because that's, once again, it highlights. I mean, this is Soros, it's Larry Fink, it's all the names you expect at these events.
It is. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please go.
No, I was just going to say, you can see we're kind of pointing out and saying, look, this whole thing gets branded as a conspiracy theory to kind of. Well, I think what the intention is that so when someone is actually talking about the World Economic Forum, the instant reaction for your average person is going to be like, oh, well, that's all just a conspiracy theory thing. Yes. Sure, there are some crazy, outlandish conspiracy theories about the World Economic Forum
100%.
that are probably not even in the slightest bit based in any sort of reality. But does that mean that there's not, like another speech from Klaus Schwab where he's saying that they go in and they penetrate the cabinets of other countries, putting their people on the cabinets, on the leadership of other governments. He openly says that. So this painting kind of by mainstream Western media to make it look like if you talk about the World Economic Forum at all, everything to do with that's conspiracy theory. It's not true. It's just they're just having a conference. They're just talking about the goals of the world. Sure, but you have to also be able to look at it objectively and say, no, there is stuff that they're saying that is a little outlandish and all over the place, and it's not a conspiracy theory to say, hey, no, here's what they've actually said last year, here's what they said in 2021, here's what they were saying in 2019. So it's a very coordinated effort to try to make it appear as something that it isn't, and that then drives further conspiracy theories surrounding it.
Yes, and when you control the narrative, and they do, they control the media, they control the neighbor, they work together in coordination. And if you're on that side of belief of things, you'd say, well, it's for our common good, and they're believers, and that's fine. But the problem with it is that now that it's become mainstream, and they even talk about this openly now, that this organization is now mainstream, and that bothers them because it's always been out in the open, but it has been this visceral response by people saying, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory, it's just silly. And that enough would make people not bother looking. Now people are kind of looking, but once they start itching at that, then it's like an unraveling of, oh my God, this is where this whole ideology comes from. So, it's, if you wondered why, a lot of the political hot topics are a topic or an issue, just go back and read all of their posts and all of their set goals. They're explicit. And they do, it's Agenda 21, Agenda 30 with the UN in partnership. And, you even have on there the leader of the WHO, World Health Organization, who is an expressed and explicit communist as well. And you have to start wondering, I wonder if there's more to all of this.
Yeah, it's impossible not to. And I mean, that was kind of the point of what we wanted to do, is obviously if you follow a lot of the narratives that we talk about, you're probably familiar with this, but a lot of people haven't ever had the opportunity to really dive into what the organization is, what they do, who's involved. So we kind of wanted to paint that. It's obviously the perfect timing because it's going on right now, but it affects you no matter where you are in the world. We went through that list there of who's attending. I mean, that it touched every single continent, and most major countries in those continents have some sort of representation at this event. So it's going to have an impact on people. So they need to understand what's going on. They need to be like, obviously we can't count on the Western mainstream media to do any of this, but you need to be educated on what's going on and what's happening around this, so that you can then start to differentiate, okay, what claims about this might be true and what claims about this might just be totally ridiculous conspiracy theories.
And just a reminder, BlackRock manages money for the Fed. BlackRock has also initiated saying that they will fund the rebuilding of Ukraine.
Oh.
But we'll keep, so if you start tying these together, we just saw something here that just popped up, and we'll kind of jump off this because that's a lot. There's a lot. But if you want to see why all of these things come together and why it seems like when a coordinated message comes out and across the board, all of your extreme leftists are on board, and they have their avatars changed and flags up and you name it. It's because it's very coordinated, and it's well funded, and it's when you control media, that's what happens. On a good side is it talks about this fourth industrial revolution. This alone would be an hour-long conversation. That this is what they're calling this next kind of step. And I'll take what the SAP CEO today, that we're entering the next phase of globalization. Now, I think this whole idea of globalism is actually fragmenting and coming apart, which is great. This idea of the WF of trying to harness everyone together, I have my own take on it, but we'll leave that alone. But Christian Klein, I wanted to bring it up because he talks about technology is the solution. It is to supply chains, making them more resilient, and to handle data underpinning all of their businesses. So now, of course, he's an SAP data company, so he's going to say that, but it's true. And I mean, we've been talking with Versus a lot and the work that they've been doing. I'm going to have Gabriel Rene, who runs that company, on soon, and to see how they're implementing data in supply chain and having a huge outcome. So it just reminds people that during all of this chaos and all the conversations Davos has had in the past, and they're announcing today, and they've kind of said there's going to be a great reset, and then there's going to be a fourth industrial revolution. So that's, if you're wondering where's the optimism here, is that run of the fourth industrial, it will come. I don't know if it's tomorrow or if it's in a year. It's underway. There's so many cool technology stories, which we covered last conversation, of interesting stuff that are coming out. But at the same time, there's the alarm bells of, if you look at a state-sponsored digital currency like China, this is where things can go horrifically wrong. And we touched on this before, is if they have absolute control over your bank account, your access to money, they literally, and they're proposing this in places in England, quadrants of cities that you can't leave. If you're not either allowed or, have a permit, you pass through a checkpoint, boom, you're done. If you don't have whatever shot of whatever they want, boom, you can't leave. You can't get on the train. You can't get on the bus. Boom, you can't get access to your bank account. Guess what? You can't eat. That's where this could go. I'm not saying it will. And I don't think it would in the quote unquote West, but it's good to talk about these things, because if it was up to some of these people, we know Justin would do it. He's already done it. We know Jacinda would do it. They're doing it right now. We know Scotland is doing this type of thing. They're gladly doing it. So a lot of these political things are happening in turn, and you need to have a say, and you need to actually go look and find out the information for yourself, not only to make sure that you're not handing away everything the West was built on for some ideology that, yes, is it communism? No, it's not technically communism, but it's very close. It doesn't fix a basic foundation in Bolshevism. Why can I say that? Well, I studied, economics and political theory in university, of which you get all of the extreme left wing, but none of the right wing stuff. So I can speak on all of the far left Marxist doctrine because we had to learn it. It wasn't until I left university I thought, wait, how come fascism bad? Maybe I should read a book on it and see what is this actually about. Listen, it's authoritarian and bad as well, but you have to go challenge yourself to look at the things that are bad to go, well, what's bad about it? Because as soon as I hear anyone talk about, and even an educated person about fascism, 99.9% time they're wrong. It's just a meme from a movie or a meme from Wikipedia, and it's not actually the idea.
No, and it's been something that you've been kind of force-fed a narrative around to understand and think of it in a certain way. And that's if COVID and Ukraine and everything over the past 3 years now hasn't taught people that you have to do a little bit of digging and can't just take whatever narrative's being fed to you. And that applies to us as well. Don't just take what we're saying at verbatim. Go look into it, challenge it. We're happy to debate and talk about these topics. We love it, actually. But you have to be doing that. You have to be thinking critically when you're looking at any of these sort of situations, because the truth is never going to be what it's made out to be. And I think you say that. I think you saying that, Austin. It's that we'd spoken about doing maybe more of a live, not a live stream, but a group chat. And I don't want to do a Discord or anything like that nature, but doing maybe just a Zoom call where people can join on. They don't have to turn on their cameras. They don't have to have even their names, but we can discuss one article or one theme or one sector, graphite and this sector, or what does carbon sequestration look like, so that we can get people that are watching, because we're picking up a lot more viewership, to then challenge us to say, well, I don't like, why do you say that? Like, then we can pull up the articles, walk someone through it, because it is exceptionally daunting to decide that you want to look at just one thing, the World Economic Forum. It takes a long time to surf through. And guess what? People have kids, they've got family, they've got work, they've got a ton of pressure and a ton of things that's not really necessarily fun. It's a lot easier to just listen to your state-sponsored news that'll tell you this is bad, this is good. And they give you lots of good feel stories. And then you go, oh, okay, I feel good. I feel informed. If we can maybe jumpstart that conversation, do a little bit of the heavy lifting, show you both sides, not only will it kind of open up your mind to critical thinking, but also it'll harness not necessarily maybe the investments we like, but it'll help to think people go, ooh, this group with $10 trillion is saying they're moving money this way. Oh, that's a good sign. I should maybe do the same thing.
I should look at this sector, or I should get excited about this sector. Or like we were talking last week, maybe it's not all doom and gloom. Maybe the climate's changing, but maybe we're right on it. And technology is moving at such an incredible pace that, it's going to be a challenge, but we even said, I'll leave with this, is that even Bill Gates has kind of hinted that, I think we're going to meet all of our targets. And it's like, oh, That's interesting. That narrative changed pretty quick. So
yeah, exactly. So that's something that is encouraging to look at as well, right? So that's the nice thing about it is you can say, look, if you're all in favor of a lot of this narrative and stuff, that yeah, technology is progressing at a rate where you can kind of keep up with it, and money's flowing in the right directions, and that ties back to everything that we look at as well, and saying, look, the narrative is starting to shift, and we've talked about this privately, you and I, saying, for a lot of these mining companies, this is the time to really start to take advantage of this narrative shifting in this direction, because it's creating an opportunity, and there's kind of this vacuum that's going to be able to be filled by a lot of people that can meet the critical demand to help move forward and follow the money and where it's going, and you'll be able to build for success off the back of that.
Yes, I mean, pointing out those big news pieces like the Department of Defense looking to Canada, Biden's infrastructure, where they're giving the nod to Mexico and to Canada, the Three Amigos. Yeah. You can look into the Three Amigos, which is tied back into WF as well. It's fascinating how all these things come together. But the good in that is you get to see there are so many incredible projects in Canada. We could be a feeder system towards so many incredible new technologies that are being developed and underway that can do a lot for the environment, make things cleaner, and provide opportunities for people. And that's, once again, out of all of the ugliness that's associated with it, there's still lots of good.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Well, and you know what? We've gone a little over 30 minutes here. We've got to get back to all the speakers in Davos and hear the interesting things that they have to say here. But this is a great conversation to dive into. It's a very complicated topic. We're open to feedback from anyone on it. Reach out to us. Let us know if you want us to dive into other things a little bit deeper on it. We're happy to do that as well. But as always, like and subscribe to the videos, to the channel. It helps us immensely. We greatly appreciate it. It helps the algorithm. We've got to seduce YouTube into loving our content. And that's
this
helpful.
one might not be the one, but hey, help us out.
This one might not be the one, but hey, we'll take it. We'll take it where we get it. But yeah, great time as always chatting with you, Andrew. Look forward to doing this again on Friday.
Take care, everyone.
Cheers, guys.